a strong, powerful female. And there's a second female operator. And there's another female operator. There's a lot of girl power in this cinematic trailer. Oh, a redhead. I like redheads. A strong female boss. Stunning and brave. They've even put a hot girl in charge of the armory. Oh look, they've brought along a pet man to help carry things. At this point, I'm surprised Ubisoft hasn't asked all their male gamers to chop their own balls off, to save them the effort. Welcome to the future of Ubisoft video games, where everything is run by girls, and there's one big muscly bloke who seems a bit thick.
I'll tell you what I want, but I really want.
So here we are, once again, reviewing this year's paucity of game content from former game developer and current online casino operator, Ubisoft. For anyone in too much of a rush to watch the whole shit show, the short version is this. It was tragic. There are Native American Indians. A little charity work for PR purposes. And did I mention it was tragic? What's even funnier is that they edited it so that they were flipping back and forth between the same games to give the illusion that there was actually more going on here. Trust me, there wasn't. So let's grab some caffeine pills, tape our eyelids open and brace ourselves for this onslaught of nothingness. Well, Ubisoft kicks off with this year's presenters. A woman with no soul, and a geezer with no sense of dignity.
I'm excited. We're filming this together. We got this gorgeous set. E3 is back.
Right off the bat, we had a reveal of Rainbow Six Siege Extraction, the new PvE co-op version of Rainbow Six Siege, where Ubisoft desperately tries to repackage an achingly old game with a creaking game engine as some kind of new product. Just like 2015 was only yesterday. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is between the Anvil engine and the Anvil Next engine, but judging from the visuals, not fucking much. And for the record, the first Assassin's Creed game was made with the Anvil engine, so when people complain that Rainbow Six Siege Extraction looks like a decades old game, they might actually be literally correct. So, what did it look like? Well, from what I can see, it looks like a 10-year-old game being flogged for 70 quid. Buy at your peril. There are, however, lots and lots of female characters in all of the promotional material. I'm pretty sure Yves Guillemot thinks all the workplace abuse accusations will all magically evaporate if he makes 90% of the player characters in his games from now on female, non-binary and pansexual. And I can say right now, factually, this tactic is not working. Incidentally, for those of you who don't know, after the deluge of complaints about how Ubisoft chokes out, treats its staff, the company has been running an aggressive PR containment operation, desperately trying to convince everyone that they have learned from their mistakes. They are really sorry.
I am truly sorry to everyone who was hurt.
Sorry.
And that they are drugging, treating their staff much more professionally now. No one has been convinced because of the lack of actual action. Hence this stuff trending on Twitter. I did get sent a Ubisoft application form recently, and nothing looked particularly different. It was pretty much the same questions that I see on all their application forms. If you identify as a female, please indicate in the selection which shade of blue most appropriately describes your undercut. As a white, heterosexual male, how responsible do you feel for the suffering of everyone you have oppressed? Overwhelmingly guilty. Incredibly guilty. Very guilty. A bit guilty. It's okay, I'll look for a job elsewhere. If you saw a co-worker making sexual advances towards teenage girls at a gaming convention, would you A. turn a blind eye, B. try and get a piece of the action, or C. make a formal complaint to your line manager and then pack your desk because HR will send you to work in some shithole on the other side of the planet until you quit your job? Obviously, the correct answer is try and get a piece of the action. But enough about boring HR issues. We have vastly more boring things to discuss, like Ubisoft's video game offerings at this year's E3. Rocksmith Plus, the musical subscription model coercive revenue generator. I liked the idea of Rocksmith Plus in principle, actually. I've never heard of it before, but apparently Rocksmith has been around for 10 years. Only now they are introducing some kind of premium subscription service called Rocksmith Plus. Right off the mark, that is a fairly weak branding concept. I mean, I've tried Ubisoft Plus subscription service, and that's overpriced, and most of the content is shite. I guess at least Rocksmith actually teaches you how to play an actual guitar, and I reckon being able to busk might prove to be a valuable skill after the impending global financial meltdown and hyperinflationary train wreck. I used to have a mate that obsessed over Guitar Hero. The sad wanker would practice all day and all night, and you couldn't go around his gaff without him banging out some flawless rendition of Britney Spears' Toxic, or that really fucking annoying Justin Bieber song. What was it called? Ah yes, all of them. Anyway, he played on a plastic non-guitar covered in buttons. I kept trying to explain to the twat that if he smashed that plastic monstrosity and bought a real fucking guitar, then spent the same amount of time practicing that, he would sound like Pepe fucking Habichuela by the end of the month. So yeah, sadly, Ubisoft gets my vote in principle on Rocksmith, although I'm assuming it comes with loot boxes. Loot boxes where you have to play to win. See what I did there? Well, I didn't think it was a very funny joke either. Just when I was getting ready to admit that Ubisoft had done something morally decent and culturally noble, I got to the bit where they explained that it was a fucking subscription service. Fuckers. Shame, I was actually quite looking forward to the opportunity of learning how to play Smack My Bitch Up by The Prodigy. I did laugh at the idea of Rocksmith Plus giving you real-time feedback as you play. Did they record the sound of people sniggering? Suggesting you give up guitar and buy a drum? Or someone saying, "Oh my god, that is dreadful. If I made that game, it would be better." Just saying. They claim that this will be the most diverse song library in the history of music learning software. Well, I'm sure the bar is set fairly low on that one. I don't actually know of any other music learning software library. But I'm pretty sure Ubisoft's definition of diverse aligns with the activists' meaning of diverse. So basically, it will be a large amount, with everything controversial or potentially offensive taken out. Don't believe me? Okay then, when the game is released, check for the following songs: Rape Me by Nirvana, China Girl by David Bowie, Turning Japanese by The Vapors, Fairy Tale of New York by The Pogues, or The Most Offensive Song Ever. The Most Offensive Song Ever by Matt Stone.
You can suck all the dick you want and still be the mother of Christ.
All of which are legendary and iconic songs, and I doubt any of them will make the cut. Oh, and check carefully before you sign up to the subscription services. It certainly looks like you lose access to all your shit if you stop subscribing. You have been warned. All this being griped, I do actually like the concept of this game. It's essentially a video game technology being used to teach people real life skills. I think this is an incredibly virtuous and idealistic enterprise, and I say that as someone who has learned many essential and gratifying skills from a plethora of video games. I learned all about Roman martial history from playing the Total War series. My unrealistic, obnoxious and overly opinionated knowledge of firearms comes from Call of Duty. I learnt to drive playing Grand Theft Auto. And when it came to human interaction and forming meaningful spiritual and romantic bonds, I have to admit that I learned how to hit on chicks by playing Super Seducer. I guess I just feel a bit cynical about two things. This new subscription service just looks like a way to remonetize existing IP, Ubisoft's basic shareholder strategy, FY fucking-I, and perhaps just as significantly, Rocksmith does not teach you how to read actual music. So it will create a generation of guitarists that are entirely dependent on Ubisoft's weird Guitar Hero-esque pixel spam user interface. That's a little sad. That really is taking paywalling to new artistic and cultural levels. It's a morbid thought that in the post-apocalypse, when people want to play guitar around the campfire, they won't just have to scavenge a guitar, they might also need to scavenge a working console and TV, and power up a petrol generator, so they can read the song off Rocksmith. Not that this would probably work either, because the subscription service would have gone offline when the fucking bombs dropped. Oh, and as a word of warning about subscription services, apparently, in 2018, Activision just said, fuck it, and switched off the Guitar Hero Live servers, rendering 92% of the entire game catalogue unplayable. So at this point I think it's safe to say, buy a cheap guitar, find a teacher, practice in your bedroom. It's a formula that has worked for generations of rock stars. Riders Republic. I don't know. It just looks like an excuse to build a giant online microtransaction shop and attach some minigames to it. Do you remember that controversy with Call of Duty World War II loot boxes, where players had to stand around grumbling in a central zone and watch other people open better prizes than them in their loot boxes? Now imagine an entire game built upon that controversy. That is certainly what this looks like. The irony obviously being that in an online digital world, how do you really know that other players who aren't in your party are really getting better loot box wins than you? Maybe your visuals are being manipulated. I have no doubt that they realise that manipulating this aspect of the game too will increase spend. I guess one consolation of Riders Republic is that an army of video game fatties like myself might be tempted to play this rather than going out into the real world and using wingsuits and doing high-speed downhill mountain biking, because those sports are a fucking bloodbath.
Talk to me. Just you have to, but my friend.
Okay,
But don't worry, there was no danger of that happening, and coincidentally, there was no danger of me playing Riders Republic either. And besides, it's not a Riders Republic. The players have no say or control about what goes on. The players in this game are a republic, in the same way as ethnic Uyghur prisoners in a Chinese concentration camp qualify as a republic. I will reluctantly admit that the mountain biking did actually look pretty exhilarating, and the snowboarding looks like it might give you a head rush. But I just hope there is a hardcore mode where you can shatter your leg bone when you fuck up a stunt, or you can disintegrate yourself by flying a wingsuit into a tree at 180 miles per hour, and then your account gets deleted because you're dead. It would be hilarious to see some wingsuit guy's guts splattered over the other players, or watching your mate get a green stick fracture and a simultaneous notification that for the next 3 months he can only play the hospital minigame where he logs in every day to get his pins stabilised and check for infections and find out what jelly is on the menu today. Now that level of hardcore realism would be literally funny as fuck. Well, I think it would be. It would be funny, right? I did, however, notice that there are no skiing facilities or accommodation for disabled skiers, like in real life. Sure, there is a hobo on a bicycle playing a banjo, which is obviously complete win. You could strap a banjo onto a prison rapist, and I would probably be tempted to share a cell with him. But the entire absence of disabled sporting facilities in the game means one thing. It means that some dickhead will no doubt go on Twitter and complain about Ubisoft being ableist again. And then Ubisoft will offer a grovelling apology, virtue signal, introduce something and try and give the impression that they give a shit, just to try and take the sting out of all the workplace abuse allegations. And mark my words, they don't give a shit, just like they don't really give a shit about disability issues. How do I know this? Because I've been following Ubisoft for a very, very long time, and I've never seen a disabled person presenting at E3, doing their demos, promos, or company trailers. Ubisoft might be putting the spotlight on disability, but I'm not sure that their disabled workers can see that spotlight whilst they're being hidden away in the back room every time a camera comes out for a promo, or they're selecting presenters for E3. I am absolutely not kidding when I say I really hope someone flags this issue up on social media, just like what happened with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's funny watching very disingenuous and inauthentic people squirm and pretend to care. Overall, Riders Republic looks like a rather fun, adrenaline-fueled game for retinol-infused teenagers missing their extreme death sports fix under lockdown. It's just a pity that Ubisoft will do absolutely everything within their capability to turn it into a sports-themed casino. I'm not really a sports game kind of lazy tard, but Riders Republic looks like the kind of game that I could possibly see myself at least trying if it was made by a different publisher. Rainbow Six Siege. Well, this was more rehashing of existing IP. Apparently the big news for the franchise is crossplay and cosplay. Then they introduced their new Defender joining Team Rainbow. Whatever that means. I think it's a new character you can play, or should I say buy. I'm sure you can earn it too, if you have a spare 6 months. They introduced it in an animated trailer where all the characters were girls, apart from the grizzly bear that attacked them. Which might be a girl too, but I won't guess, because I don't want to risk misgendering a bear, because I might get banned on social media for that. I mean, you can get banned on social media for misgendering a cartoon superhero, so fuck knows. Anyway, more of Thunderbird later. Don't worry, Ubisoft has so little on show that this year's E3 repeats itself more than I do. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is still evolving thanks to our feedback. You are very welcome, Ubisoft. It was my pleasure. My feedback was basically this. At launch, it was unfinished and shitty. Letting players buy anything in-game with real cash money was shitty. Bleating on about female empowerment at Ubisoft and then hiring the spaffer-in-chief, Little Wayne, to promote the game was shitty. All of these things were shitty at launch and remain shitty now. So I guess what they mean by evolving is that it's evolving from the primordial ooze and might soon resemble a protozoa. Perhaps they are considering actually scripting some enemy AI, perchance. I'm not even sure why this segment was in the show, to be honest. They didn't say anything other than, hey, we made Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and it's evolving. Look, I don't mind pootling around Ghost Recon Breakpoint from time to time. I'm pissed off about how much I paid for it, but it's not unpleasant. It's just not very good. Still, I do at least enjoy flying around in my attack helicopter, killing random idiots. It has occurred to me that my ideal job might be drone pilot. You guys would trust me with that, right? Although, I'd likely get the sack for trying to high-five the other pilots after a kill, or laughing hysterically when I accidentally miss and bomb a hospital. Then again, from watching the news recently, that kind of behaviour might be perfectly acceptable for drone pilots these days. Anyway, they know where to contact me if they're hiring. Just Dance.
I don't think they're ready for this, Jelly.
Then they had a spot about Just Dance.
You will not just play, you will absolutely slay.
The dance segment for this at E3 is traditionally my favourite part of the show. I hate the dancing itself, mind. Dancing is wrong and should be outlawed, but I do love the audience reactions. Honestly, the grade A level of lecherous perverts in the audience are a sight to behold. Every fourth or fifth guy out in the seats is drooling like a pederast and looks like they've cut the bottom out of their popcorn bucket. It's like they've never seen a bunch of barely legal teenagers dancing around in tights before. Do they come from towns without normal strip clubs? So what does this year's Just Dance have in store for us?
Girl, I don't dance, I work. I don't play, I slay. I don't walk, I strut, 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 and then you sashay.
Yeah, I think I'll be giving that a miss. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Yes, the spectre of Arse Creed Valhalla reared its ugly head. The woke, anti-English Viking boredom simulator where you can literally buy a rainbow unicorn Viking longboat in the in-game microtransaction shop. Jesus, why are they banging on again about another game they've already released?
We've been tracking various known issues on our forums, and also shared our complex bug-fixing process in a recent dev blog. We love seeing your continual feedback, and we thank you for your patience and support for the game. Known issues on our forums. Known issues on our forums. Bug-fixing process.
Known issues.
Bug-fixing process.
Known issues. Bug fixing process.
And we have you to thank for that.
Anyone familiar with the Division franchise will have heard all this shit before many, hundreds, perhaps thousands of times. It's shorthand for, we released it broke, and we are still trying to fix it, because the in-game store is still making some money. Well, more precisely, we have a minuscule budget that's about 5% of the income of the microtransactions. So as long as people keep paying real cash for ridiculous pixels, we will chaperone some interns and work experience kids to make minimal effort to fix the issues that should have been fixed at launch, and add some post-launch content for the patient, loyal fans. Correction, the extra post-launch content, most of that, you have to pay for. My bad. In fact, the more I looked into this, the more vague this all became. But at least from a cursory investigation, it certainly looks like all the substantive new content is paid for DLC and or part of the season pass. The only free shit is seasonal events. Frankly, I'm not sure whether these are really substantive content or come part and parcel as some sort of seasonal microtransaction event. If I'm wrong about any of this, I don't care. I'm not buying the season pass on the off chance that Ubisoft might do one thing this year that isn't fleecing the players. If they do end up not fleecing the players, I'm sure it will be headline news and I'll read all about it in the press. They are apparently planning to introduce a new Viking history mode, or Discovery Tour as I think it's called in other Assassin's Creed games, which has aspirations to be a credible learning tool for students of Viking history. This part actually looks quite interesting and quite noble. it initially looks like some kind of interactive Viking walking tour theme park deal. Although I would note that I hope they make it very clear that the rest of the game is so rife with historical fallacies and complete inaccuracies that by comparison it makes the movie Marie Antoinette look like a fucking historical treatise on French socio-economic theory. Assassin's Creed Valhalla had titanium 900 years before it was discovered, and England is full of giant snowy mountains in the summer. But yeah, in principle, if it's accurate, the Trainer Wheel History Lesson plugin seems like a nice way to teach people about Viking history. And given the state of the world right now, I think we really need this. And by this, I mean a generation of kids that want to learn history without being fucked to bother themselves with annoying things like books and reading. Great idea! The publisher that characterised the Viking raiders as the victims and the victims of the pillaging as the villains now wants to teach us all history. Absolutely fucking golden. I'm starting to appreciate precisely why the world is in its current shit state. Then Ubisoft started showcasing its TV and movie division, Mythic Quest. That comedy about video game production, which will never be truly comedic because Ubisoft ain't going to let them make jokes about choking staff or targeting children with gambling mechanics. Werewolves Within is a movie based on the 2016 Ubisoft VR game on Oculus Rift that nobody has ever heard of and got fairly shitty reviews. Hard to believe really, because the sentence 2016 Ubisoft VR game on Oculus Rift literally screams excellence and high production values. How did that end up being a catastrophic failure? I've not played the game and the film isn't released yet, but I'm calling it now. The sheriff is one of the werewolves, and this particular adaptation will be one of the rare occasions where the film is better than the game. Far Cry 6, Banana Republic action-adventure parenting-themed online shop. Even the most vile tyrant is the star of their narrative. Apparently. That's certainly the code that I live by. When it comes to memorable villains, nobody does it better than Far Cry. Well, that is literally false advertising. We all remember Vaz from Far Cry 3, but that's it. Seriously, list all the Far Cry 3 villains you can remember in the comments section. I seem to remember a wolf, and that idiot with the guitar and the bass from Far Cry New Dawn was pretty sinister, but that was mainly due to bad lip sync. So no, there was Vaz. Lots of people do villains better. Kingdom Come Deliverance, Red Dead Redemption 2, Fallout. I could keep going. Far Cry 3 had Vaz. He was an excellent villain, and Ubisoft is still trading on that past glory today. Anyway, they are releasing Far Cry 6 soon, which should be interesting. Already everyone is shitting the bed, wondering if this is going to make some kind of political point for once, and if so, what precisely are people going to decide they need to be offended about? Either it will be a preachy sermon about how Western values are to blame for all the ills in the third world, and the players will hate it. Or it will be an earthy, realistic game based on historical precedent, in which case the gatekeeping mainstream video game journalists will hate it and decry it as some kind of neo-colonialist, enablist discourse and propaganda. I'm truly sorry, kids, but some third world banana republics are shitholes. They are shitholes run by corrupt dictators, and telling stories about it isn't anywhere near as offensive as pretending it's not true. Or pretending that it's all our fault. I know that what I'm saying is factually true, because my country is always selling weapons to third world shitholes. Can't work out whether I just proved myself right or wrong. But who cares? We got the weapon sales right. Personally, based on the trailers I've seen, I really like the look of Far Cry 6. It seems to be a worthy tale about an embattled leader who tries his best to be a loving father and doting ruler of his country, despite endless betrayals from his son, his people, and his lazy, ungrateful sweatshop workforce. I'm already rooting for the guy. Far Cry 6 will be released on October 7th, 2021, and no doubt anything wrong with the game will be blamed on the pandemic. I, for one, cannot wait to get my hands on this game. I just hope we get to play as the leader, so we can get to work, brutally executing all those lazy fucking peasants who keep disrupting our attempts to turn the country into a paradise. Paradise/Western puppet state. Then they did an interview with game director Omar Booley.
Because when you think Far Cry, you think about its rich legacy of villains.
I did snigger when he talked about trying to create a villain worthy of the franchise, and its rich legacy of villains. And once again, they could only roll out Vaz, which everyone will agree with, but the only other examples were some blonde tit I didn't recognise and that nobody ever talks about, and that twat from Far Cry who people only talk about when they're saying he was a shit villain. It's just Vaz, mate. Vaz was the only good villain. Get over it, for fuck's sake. So don't worry, Omar, the bar is set really low here. As long as the villain in Far Cry 6 is half as good as Vaz, he will be way better than all the rest of the fucking villains in the Far Cry franchise. Besides, with the excellent Giancarlo Esposito playing the part, he could probably just stand there silent for the whole of the game, and he would already be a better villain than Ubisoft usually creates in its video games. Far Cry 6 is coming in autumn and El Presidente looks awesome. Here's hoping we're on the same side as him. 100 XP points for throwing a grenade at protesters. What's not to like? Mario plus Rabbids. Sparks of Hope. Some sequel or something to a Nintendo Switch game. Nintendo, a company that I try to have nothing to do with because of their horrific legacy of copyright abuse. I shit you not, I typed in Nintendo Cop and it auto-completed the search to Nintendo copyright abuse. But maybe that was just based on my search history. Sorry, but when people try and deliver dramatic speeches about stories and characters in a game like this, it always makes me chuckle. It's like someone who's far too passionate about their new vacuum cleaner. It's Mario plus Rabbids, man. Calm your tits. This is not Homeworld, The Last of Us 1 or System Shock. Making a movie, however bad, out of Assassin's Creed or The Division I can understand, but nobody is ever going to make a Mario Rabbids movie. I take that back, they probably will, and it will be horribly shit. Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope is a sequel for a game with the same intellectual gravity as Angry Birds. Let's not shit the bed over this one. On a more positive note, one thing about Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope did get me excited. It meant there was a part of this crushingly fucking boring E3 presentation that I could just skip through. That's got to count for something. Then Yves Rapeman Guillemot came on screen to tell us how nice and fluffy Ubisoft is really, despite presiding over one of the most sinister institutional workplace abuse scandals in the video game industry. There's fucking meatpacking factories in Cambodia that have better HR records than Ubisoft. I have no doubt that many of the accusations are false or exaggerated, but that's partially their own fault for having a recruitment policy hell-bent on hoovering up every snowflake in the industry. Sow the wind, reap the snowflake storm. I'm sure some people there would complain that sachets in the cafeteria said white sugar and try and get them removed for being institutional, beverage-based discrimination. This aside, plenty. In fact, many of the accusations are definitely true and serious. Fuck, there's so many complaints that if 5% of them are true, Ubisoft are in deep shit. but it certainly seems like a hell of a lot more than 5% are true. They are well documented, grievous, and many have been suppressed by their HR department, who have been guilty of literally moving people's jobs to the other side of the world just to get them to shut the fuck up about their complaints. Ever heard that old phrase, sent to Siberia? Well, somebody at Ubisoft has, and they decided to make it a literal HR policy. So what did R-Eve have to say then? He just bleated a load of shareholder-friendly fluff about collaboration, partnerships, and didn't even mention choking out female employees in bars once. People might be getting tired of me bringing that up, but don't be. I might mention it again, a few more times. Just saying. I really don't know what to make of Yves Guillemot. I can't work out whether he's one of those lovely, friendly granddad types who you see in the news one day because the cops discovered the bodies of 17 teenage girls buried in his back garden, or whether he's just a rich idiot. I'd like to think he's a good man who didn't realise so much evil was going on in his company. But even a cursory analysis of his company's monetization, subscription and pedo-cash strategy indicates to me at least that he's a cold-blooded corporate lizard and defended his own offending collaborators right up until the moment it was time to reluctantly throw them all under the bus when the stories about the abuses broke out in the mainstream press like a fucking wildfire. Ubisoft actively tries to hook people on gambling, and they are telling their shareholders that they can make lots of cash by bothering less with making games and bothering more about extracting money from the games they already have. Don't make games, charge people for shit they already own, hook them on gambling. Like I said, I would like to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. At this point, it's pretty clear to me at least that Guillemot is as cold-hearted as they come. And why the fuck does he always wear pastel colours? That's gotta be some kind of public relations thing. Avatar. Then we got a reveal of the Avatar game, made on the good old reliable Snowflake engine, Snowdrop engine. Well, I've always wanted to have sex with a 9-foot woman who's painted blue, so I was looking forward to this part. The worst thing about all of this is that I'm actually going to have to watch the damn Avatar movie before I review this shitshow of a game. I heard Avatar is so bad you could show it to a room full of prison inmates and afterwards they would all be sterile. Colour me cynical, but when I watch cinematic reveal trailers like this, I always think about a few things these days. 1. How big will the chasm be between the cinematics and the actual gameplay? How much would the game be improved if they'd spent that cinematic budget on the fucking game? And 3. I play Spot the Microtransaction. I literally analyse and look at everything in the trailer and try and identify what they will be selling in the shop. No doubt the flying mounts, pets, outfits and hairstyles will make the cut. I'll call it now. When World of Warcraft first dipped its toe into the cesspool of hyper-monetization, 9 AM, day one, it was the pets and flying mounts that hit the store first. Whilst all the fanboys screeched, "It doesn't affect gameplay!" Well, maybe it doesn't affect gameplay, but it does usher in an era where all the coolest stuff in your video games that you paid for is now paywalled. Good job, fucktards. Anyway, Avatar will be coming in 2022, so if shitting all over some alien indigenous culture is your idea of a fucking party, then this game might be for you. I'm excited. Although unfortunately I think you'll only be able to play it as one of the blue hippies, so that might end up being a wasted video game opportunity. Actually, now I come to mention it, why hasn't anyone made a game like that? Third World Resource Tycoon. You play the part of a ruthless CEO extracting mineral resources from an unexplored, beautiful, ecologically fragile area of the jungle occupied by indigenous people. Slash, burn and shoot your way through the jungle, locate the resources and strip mine all that shit for profit. Set up brothels and bars in the middle of the jungle so the workers have to spend their money in your businesses. I suppose theoretically you could have a pacifist trophy for people who complete the game without killing anyone, based on my personal observations of how large greedy corporations operate, I don't think that would be very realistic. Ubisoft Plus. We then got a quick plug for Ubisoft Plus, Ubisoft's criminally overpriced, persistently under-delivering subscription service, where, for the humble fee of shit loads of money, you can get limited access to a bunch of old shit and random titles that you were never going to consider buying anyway. It's basically the exact opposite of Xbox Game Pass. Instead of getting access to lots of good games on the cheap, you don't get access to lots of good games, and it costs a fucking fortune. Credit where credit is due, mind. Ubisoft Plus is a mighty boon for people with decent taste in video games who also happen to review them. Having been stung for huge amounts of money on The Division 2 and other Ubisoft titles, I have learned my lesson. Now, when I review a Ubisoft game, I sign up for 1 month subscription to Ubisoft Plus, thereby only shitting 15 quid down the toilet instead of 50, 60 or 70. It's wonderful, and I'm not being sarcastic. If you are a publisher who is a bit crap and makes a lot of crap games, and you want to provide a wonderful service to reviewers so they can get temporary access to your games, then this is a superb solution. Obviously, it only helps reviewers who aren't getting free early access copies and who aren't on the payroll. But nevertheless, Ubisoft Plus is a perfect service for reviewers who want to save money whilst reviewing dire video games. Strange, but true. For actually playing video games for enjoyment purposes, I'm more of an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate fan myself. 12 quid for PC and Xbox access, includes gold, some EA games and some discounts thrown in. And no, I'm not shilling for them, it's just a good deal. Besides, anyone who thinks Microsoft would do business with me clearly hasn't watched my Gears 5 review. Rainbow Six Siege Thunderbird. Just to break up the virtue signalling, they did some more virtue signalling, this time introducing the Rainbow Six Siege operator Thunderbird, no doubt as part of yet another volley of fake careface and social sensitivity. Mina Thunderbird Sky is a helicopter pilot. Get it? Helicopter? Sky? Thunderbird? So Mina Thunderbird Sky has 3 words in her name, and only one of them isn't a fucking cliche. She is going to be a genuine, authentic and realistic portrayal of a Nakota Native American Indian woman. Here are some Nakota women talking about this Rainbow Six Siege character. And here is Thunderbird. One of these things is not like the others. Personally, I would say genuine and authentic is a bit of a reach. Perhaps idealised, fantasy or stylised might be technically more accurate. Still, it's a noble endeavour, even if Ubisoft doesn't really give a shit about the issues and it's just a branding and marketing exercise. It's always nice to see Indigenous peoples getting some attention, especially when they're not being portrayed as stereotypes. As a fan of Deadlands, I love this shit. Given this strange phase of social politics that we're all having to endure, I think choosing to have a Native American character is actually a rather refreshing change of rhythm. I'm frankly getting bored shitless with my daily routine of being reminded of which groups of victims I'm supposed to feel guilty about on any particular day. So if Ubisoft is going to virtue signal in Rainbow Six Siege, at least doing it with Native American culture is at least a worthy cause. Most generally received histories of the Americas paint a fictional picture of a barely occupied continent with a few Indians camping here and there. But the tragic reality is that North America was a fully occupied continental social ecology with well over 30 million indigenous peoples. Well, there are only 5 million left now. After a few centuries of killing, imprisonment, persecution, banishment and starvation, the Western settlers managed to decimate the population. Whilst the rest of the globe experienced a population boom, the indigenous population of North America shrank to a fraction of its original size. So next time someone starts complaining about being victimised by a microaggression, tell them to imagine what it's like to have millions of European settlers show up with guns, murder half your tribe, and then fuck you off to a reservation in the middle of a desert. Native American video game characters certainly get my vote, whether the sentiment is sincere or not on behalf of Ubisoft. And it's not. It's absolutely not sincere. You know that, right? I'm not really surprised that Ubisoft ended up hooking up with Native American people's mind. After all, Ubisoft is turning all of its games into casinos, and Native Americans are turning all of their reservations into casinos. It's a perfectly organic marriage, and a natural fit when you think about it. I guess the only real difference here is that the Native Americans make sure you are over 18 before they let you start gambling away all of your money. And before anyone accuses me of drawing on a stereotype, with over 460 gambling operations run by 240 tribes, let's just agree that it's a $27 billion a year stereotype. So in summary, nice to see Native Americans getting some attention. Ubisoft doesn't really care about any of this shit. It's branding. Thunderbird has nice face tats. She will probably cost you a lot of money. No, I don't think she would have survived that bear attack. She's got some shitty healing skill that can help the enemy. And if Native Americans want to run casinos and fleece the locals, well, it's not ideal, but I guess that if anyone has earned the right to fleece the locals, it's the people who lived there for thousands of years, before the locals even turned up. Just saying. The absolute comedy gold moment of this entire Ubisoft presentation was when Tarina Bellegarde, Nakoda culture consultant, said this.
I might just, purchase a game console and try it out myself.
Well, I've heard some of the banter in the lobbies for Rainbow Six Siege, and I'm not sure she really knows what she's letting herself in for. But when she does, I really hope she streams it.
They could have a cum box. That'd be even worse.
I don't even know what that is.
It's a Reddit story about a guy who just kept coming like non-stop into a box.
Josh Sharp, Community Control Officer.
Hey everyone.
Community representative / community manager / thought policeman is basically one of those people that delete any critical posts off of official forums, Steam forums or the subreddit whilst pretending to be everyone's friend. It's funny, when I put it like that I realised that being paid to pretend to care about people you don't give a shit about is literally one of the oldest professions that takes many, many forms. Therapist, butler, and prostitute. So I guess being a community manager is the ideal job for someone who doesn't mind faking about having any fucks to give, but can't be bothered to read books, is useless at ironing, and doesn't give a blowjob worth a damn. It's the bottom rung on the pretend friend profession ladder. Obviously, prostitute is right up there at the top. Anyway, Josh Sharp told us about Rainbow Six Siege stuff, because, we really needed to hear more about Rainbow Six Siege for about the fucking 7th time in this presentation. Whilst my eyelids started to droop, and I did that drunken, nodding off to sleep, head bobbing thing I do that sometimes results in me face butting my keyboard late at night. Or steering wheel. He did announce that they were working on a new cheat detection system. It's year fucking 6 of the game, mate. If you haven't sorted out the anti-cheat by now, it's never going to happen. This automated database cheat detection will apparently end cheating in the game forever by looking at Excel spreadsheet data or some statistical analytical nonsense that never ever fucking works unless some tit is using cheats for the first time and set everything to 100% and then turned on a wall hack. I'm pretty sure cheats will just move their sliders down a bit for a few weeks so they get less headshots, make sure they have their system optimised to not do those red flag behaviours that give themselves away when the numbers are crunched for the stats. And let's face it, only a cretin would roll with 100% headshot settings. That shit is so obvious that you can literally see someone doing it in-game, for fuck's sake. He did give a shout out to Able Gamers, which at least initially seems like a decent charity, although I've not background checked them, so don't take my word for it. But they do seem to do good work. And anything that helps people with disabilities get access to video games has got to be a good thing, as long as they deactivate loot boxes first, of course. Their next foray into Rainbow Six Siege charity PR is with Stack Up, which works with veterans. Personally, I'm impressed that Ubisoft had the nuts to work with veterans, because I thought they were too woke to get involved with all that. Normally Ubisoft is more into causes like rescuing pansexual monkeys from abusive relationships with their siblings, and choking women out in bars. See? That one took you by surprise, even though you knew I was going to mention it again. Anyway, Stack Up is a charity that helps US and Allied veterans. Their goal is to combat suicide using video games, and it's an absolutely top tier and excellent cause. Most people don't appreciate how high suicide rates are with veterans, and how horrifically difficult it can be returning to normal life after service. Our societies are increasingly doing a lot more right when it comes to caring for, paying and training our military. But the second they finish their service, they're sadly and too frequently just fucked off into civilian life with the assumption that it'll all just be fine. You can't spend a couple of years hiding in a shitty ditch in Afghanistan, being mortared every day, whilst your mates are getting blown up by roadside bombs, and then just casually hop back into civilian life like it's no biggie. The lack of post-service care for veterans is one of the crimes of modern society. So yeah, supporting Stack Up seems like an exemplary move by Rainbow Six Siege. Although I'm pretty sure someone coached their boss man to say this.
You guys over at Ubisoft sure know how to run games as a service. Games as a service.
Games as a service.
That made me wince. But since I'm me, and I can't ever pass on an opportunity to be a bitch, let's put this all in perspective. The last charity drive raised $170,000 for able gamers. Ubisoft's earning in the financial year 2020 was $1.44 billion. If Ubisoft really wanted to be charitable, they could get their own big fat checkbook out instead, and a fraction of 1% of their earnings would dwarf their charity drive monies. Now that puts it all in perspective. Charity work is free advertising for Ubisoft. The other breaking news about Rainbow Six Siege is that soon it will be out on Google Stadia. This is absolutely fantastic news for the 15 people with Google Stadia subscriptions. Well, 14 by the end of the month, when Susan Wojcicki's subscription runs out. Apparently she's a big fan of the Turing test, and lag, and censorship, and faking award ceremonies so she can give herself a freedom of speech award. Funnier shit than anything I can make up. Rainbow Six Siege is apparently now going full crossplay, so sales of Chronos Max are no doubt ejaculating through the roof. Personally, I don't play Rainbow Six Siege because it requires skill, reflexes and sobriety, which are attributes I'm sadly entirely devoid of. So this entire section was a bit of a slog for me. The mood was, however, lifted when they rolled out two girls. Shockingly, neither of them had blue hair, nor any visible tattoos. I say visible because for all I know, they might both have giant Neil Druckmann tattoos on their backs. But since they both seem relatively coherent and intelligent, let's assume that this is not the case. They were talking about fan art. I guess cosplay took a day off. The end. Basically, the whole of E3 was just confirmation that Ubisoft is now in the business of monetising and remonetising, and focusing on extracting more revenue from the players without all that bothersome annoyance of making new video games. I'm also quite bemused by this whole keeping Ubisoft accountable thing. I guess it's well intentioned, but also kind of misses the point. Ubisoft pretends to be some kind of woke progressive utopia because of sales and marketing. It's a branding exercise. Nobody with half an ounce of sense or knowledge of their business practices ever actually believed that shit. Ubisoft has the capacity to make great games, and it has brilliant developers working there. But they won't. They have lost the confidence in their ability to do it, so they won't take the risk. Instead, they are rehashing old franchises, chasing monetization, pedo-cash gambling mechanics, subscription services, merchandising, and all the while pandering to the woke activist press, who hate them anyway because they treat their staff so badly. Ubisoft is apparently a video game company. I would postulate that if they continue to prosecute this daft strategy, a point will come where they'll forget how to make decent games and go the same way as Disney. It's a symptom of Ubisoft's diseased condition as a video game company that they're investing so heavily in merchandising their games. They ain't even noticing that they're running out of IP that they can actually merchandise. I guess if I had to sum up Ubisoft in one sentence, it would be this. Fuck off with your fake wokeness, it's alienating your customers. Concentrate on making good games. They are currently under investigation for abusing their staff. They are under scrutiny for egregious monetization and loot box gambling. And meanwhile, they're showboating about inclusivity. It doesn't wash. Drug and choke out less staff in bars. Do less gambling. Make some decent games. Not fucking hard to figure out. And then there is the core issue that Ubisoft hasn't fathomed yet. They are trying to appear woke, caring, compassionate, and being there for the players. But this is part of their branding, and it's not what they actually want to be or do. There is a difference between branding and ethics. It's the difference between pretending and being. Ubisoft is only concerned with appearing to do the right thing and branding themselves as inclusive, socially responsible and compassionate. But when you're only pretending, you are always going to get caught out eventually. Ubisoft needs to start being better as both an employer and as a game maker. Although you have to laugh though, they filled up their workplace with woke, easily offended, right-on progressive blue hairs, and then enforced a workplace culture more suited to a booze and titty-groping stockbroking company. Hilarious. Good luck putting that fire out, guys. In the whole of that E3 announcement, there was, I think, one new game announced, and some sequel stuff. The rest of the show was about rehashing old product, or just bringing it up. You know, just to remind us that they did actually make some games once. Ubisoft's E3 presentation was 1 hour and 40 minutes of fuck all. It's what happens when a corporation is in decline. And I didn't even get to see girls dancing around in their pants. Come on, guys. I'm going to give Ubisoft's 2021 E3 presentation a solid 1 out of 10. They are doing some charity work. They are doing something with Nakota Indians. But the rest of the presentation was frankly an abuse of everyone's attention span, and certainly my time. Fuck. But for now, good luck, and happy hunting.
Amazingly talented artist.